If there is one thing that every single contending team in baseball is looking to add at the trade deadline, it is bullpen help. This year, the Mets will be in that same group of teams looking to add an arm to the back of their bullpen to pair with Edwin Diaz. And on the show today, I'm going to give you an early taste of some of the names that could be available on the market, whether it's David Bednar from the Pittsburgh Pirates or David Robertson from the Chicago Cubs. I'm going to go through a list of some names that could really impact this Mets pen and put them over the top on this latest edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, there's a lot of different ways the Mets can go about trying to address their bullpen needs this season. They can stay internal. If they really want to, I've talked a lot recently about the great starting pitching depth the Mets have accumulated this year. Right now, you're at a point where I still believe you're getting quality starts from four guys in your rotation, with Trevor Williams being that spot starter swingman that's thrust into action right now. But when Max Scherzer comes back, he'll be out of the rotation. And your group is really strong. And when DeGrom comes back, if you stay healthy, suddenly you have a David Peterson that could potentially slide to the bullpen, a Taijuan Walker that could slide to the bullpen. When you get to the later parts of the season, whether it's those guys, whether it is Tyler McGill coming off an injury, Joey Lucchesi, shockingly, could be back this year in August. So there's a lot of different moves the Mets could make. McGill is going to be a while, though. He was just added to the 60-day IL, so the Mets could pick up infielder Kramer Robertson. I should know that. I covered Kramer. And honestly, I did the same thing when I was covering him with the Palm Beach Cardinals. Yeah, Robertson. Crazy. I used to do that every single week, writing out his name. I don't know what it was. I could never get it right. Kramer really is just the only name that matters when you're talking about him, right? That's what jumps out. So you forget whether it's Robertson or Robinson, but it's Robertson. So anyway, McGill won't be back until late August at this point. So who knows there? But the point is, that could be one way that the Mets can kind of juice up their bullpen by using the depth that they already have from their rotation. But if not that, they got an iron arm. It's just that simple. Colin Holderman's coming back soon. That'll be great. But that does not give you another option to close games. And as much as I talked about on yesterday's show, how there is still a pretty good amount of trust in guys like Adam Ottavino, Drew Smith, Seth Lugo, I think they need one arm. So the biggest arm on the block at the deadline this year, if the Pirates choose to deal him, is David Bednar. He has a 2.2, or actually last year, he pitched to a 2.23 ERA. This year, he has a 1.78 ERA. He's been really good since the start of the 2021 season. Last year, he had 77 strikeouts and 60 and 2/3 innings pitched. This year, he's striking out 36% of the batters he faces, has 11 saves. He works off of a 97-mile-per-hour fastball that he does a really good job keeping up in the zone, getting swings and misses, getting strikeouts. He also has a curveball, which he's allowed only one hit on all year at this point, with a whiff percentage of 37%. He has a split finger that has a whiff rate of 38.6% that he throws 13.8% of the time. The fastball, as I already mentioned, the main pitch, throws that 56.5% of the time. The batting average against is 234 on the pitch, and his whiff percentage against his fastball is almost 35%. So really hard for batters to square up Bednar. He's one of the best relievers in baseball. I honestly believe he will be the Pirates all-star this year. Every team needs one. I think he'll be the guy for Pittsburgh. This is an option that can go out. He can get 2 innings for you. He can close games for you. He could be the perfect Swiss Army knife that you can put in your bullpen that can get the big outs in the biggest moments, where you could even just save Edwin Diaz for that 9th inning. You remember that game against the Dodgers where they sent Diaz out to face off against, Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman. You could send Bednar out and save Diaz for the 9th. So he's really the best they can do. But the problem here is he's not going to be a free agent for a really long time. Do I have it? Yeah, under control for 4 more seasons. So that's after this year. Okay. You're talking about now I gotta check. I gotta check. I'm sorry, people. I gotta make sure I'm right. That still seems like too much control, even though I pulled this, yeah, free agent 2027. So 23, 24, 25, 20. Yeah. It doesn't feel right to me that he could have that much control and be this good. And that's the problem. He debuted late. He debuted at what was he? He was 24 years old, nearly 25. And so you are in this position with Bednar where he'd be incredible value because you'd have him for a long time. But that also means his trade value is at a crazy mark. It's going to take a lot to get him. So you could go that route, or you can go with a different David, which is David Robertson, a guy that I talked about when we were going through Wilson Contreras trade possibilities. I said any trade for Contreras, Robertson needs to be in it. He is right back to where he was in his heyday with the Yankees. And he's obviously the latter half of his career in his late 30s, but he has a 1.86 ERA. He's striking out 33.6% of the batters he faces. And he works off that cutter, the cutter he learned from Mariano Rivera. He's an impending free agent. So you're talking about a year of control just this season for a Cubs team that's going nowhere. A guy they just took a flyer on for a couple $1 million, it was 3.5 million or something along those lines in free agency. He's not going to cost a ton. I'm sure they're going to shop him. I'm sure they're going to trade him, and I'm sure there's going to be a market for him, and that can drive up his price. But you don't have to give up Ronnie Mauricio or Mark Vientos for him. You're going to be able to get a deal done without that. And that's the biggest thing here is trying to find somebody who you can pick up maybe without having to give that prospect that could be a star in a couple of years. So there's a give and take here. You want to go over the top and you want to win. And hey, if the Mets decided, screw it, we're going to trade Mark Vientos for David Bednar, and we're just going to say goodbye to the potential of Vientos, who could be a 40 home run guy, and we're going to bring in this pitcher that we have for a long time, and he could be the closer if we can't sign him with Diaz, and he's just going to be here for so long that it's worth it. And maybe it is. And if you win a World Series and Bednar is picking up big outs at the end of games, it's 100% worth it. But that's also a big risk to take. And I don't know how much that one reliever does push you over the top. If you look back to the Chicago Cubs in 2016, where would they have been without Aroldis Chapman? But who else did they have in that bullpen other than Chapman? They didn't really have a lot. The Mets have an Edwin Diaz. And because they have an Edwin Diaz, that does make me a little bit hesitant to go the Bednar route, considering there is other options. Like I already mentioned with David Robertson. We got a couple other ones here. But before we get into that, whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. You can build the engagement ring of her dreams with Blue Nile, which has simple tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind, so you can celebrate life special moments with fine jewelry. Their experts are on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Mets listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement, so make sure you use the code Locked On. Again, that's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace at BlueNile.com today. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure the pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry, when instead you can shop from hundreds of manufacturers at rockauto.com and save 30%, 50%, maybe even 100% more for the exact same auto parts you would get at that chain store. Rock Auto is a family business that has been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer, so go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Again, that's rockauto.com. See all the parts available for your car or truck, and make sure you write Locked On in there. How'd you hear about us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, so a couple of other names that I pulled here. You got Daniel Bard from the Rockies, a 1.88 ERA on the season, 35 strikeouts and 28 2/3 innings pitched. ERA plus of 253. You're talking about 100 being league average. So he's been elite when it comes to ERA plus and all the expected metrics. Really like Bard, sinker slider mix, sinker at 97.9, slider at 88. So big difference there. The expected batting average against Daniel Bard this year is 152. That's the top mark in the league. That's how good he's been. And this is also pitching in Colorado. So that's a really impressive as well. He's in the 98th percentile higher in all of the expected metrics, expected batting average, expected slugging, expected WOBA, all those different things. He's really good. And so this is another option the Mets could go to, and he'll be a free agent after this season. This is a pitcher that really rebuilt himself. I mean, I think he was out of the league in 2013, comes back with the Rockies in 2020 with all this velocity that he found late in his career, and suddenly here he is, one of these guys that I guess probably just rebuilt himself in a pitching lab somewhere, and he's in his late 30s doing it. So that's an option for the Mets, and it might not be the flashiest option, but he could be extremely effective, and he might not cost a ton. Again, you're talking about a reliever in his late 30s who is going to be a free agent. So the Rockies, other than being, completely aimless franchise, have no reason not to trade him. So I imagine you can get him. You could probably get him relatively cheap. I'm not saying that you can get him for nothing, but could you maybe do a Dom Smith plus fringe prospect type deal where you're giving up somebody? I'm not saying a prospect that has no value, but not a top 10 prospect, right? A prospect that the Rockies see value in, and a reclamation project they could have in Dom Smith. Something like that could get a deal done. And I think that's really the sweet spot you'd like to find, where maybe you can get a trade done where you're not giving up any of the Beatties, the Vientoses, the Alvarezes, even an Alex Ramirez or a Matt Allen, any of those guys in your top 10 you want to keep, Calvin Ziegler, whatever it is, right? Those guys that you deem untouchable or at least harder to move, or guys you really don't want to part with. This is a direction I see you can go, where you get a reliever on an expiring contract, where you give up, whether it's a Mike Vassell and Dom Smith package, and this is me just throwing stuff out there, Vassell being a pitcher that is having a really nice season, but not necessarily someone you would qualify as a great elite prospect. Very similar to when they traded Kevin Smith for Miguel Castro at the 2020 deadline, which I thought was a big mistake. Not because I just didn't find Castro that valuable, but more because I really like Kevin Smith. After the 2020 season was kind of a sham anyway, and there was no reason for that team to add. But regardless, that's one way they can go. And actually, it's a good transition to Jorge Lopez, because he is pitching for the Baltimore Orioles like Miguel Castro was, 29 years old, 2 more years of control, throws with a ton of velocity, 97-mile-per-hour sinker, has a changeup, a curveball, and a slider. So a lot of different options he pairs with that sinker. Has a 0.75 ERA this season, and is in the 95th percentile or better in all the advanced metrics. So that's another guy that's interesting, and you would get that additional year of control. Maybe that makes him, a little more expensive prospect-wise than a Bard or a Robertson, but he would certainly cost a lot less than a Bednar. Now, I also wanted to find a couple of lefties, so I got 2 here for you. One that I love, and I want to shout out my guy Clay Snowden from Just Baseball, because he told me about Joe Mantiply, wanted me to look into his numbers at one point, just mentioned how awesome he was, not necessarily as a fit for the Mets. And because I was looking at relievers, I look up this guy, only 1 walk this season. That's what I love. 28 innings pitched, 28 strikeouts, 1 walk. I love a guy that throws strikes. 31 years old, don't know if I mentioned that. Left-handed reliever, obviously, 1.29 ERA, 0.89 WHIP. His expected ERA tells us that 1.29 ERA is not just good luck. He's pitching that effectively, a 1.79 expected ERA. The chase rate that he's getting this year is in the 99th percentile, as is his expected slugging percentage against, expected ERA, his barrel percentage against. He's only given up 1 extra base hit all year. And on top of that, because he debuted so late, 4 years of control. He could be a Pedro Feliciano in your bullpen for years, maybe. He could just be that guy that's always out there. And lefties struggle against them. I think this is actually a really good option. Clay was saying that he didn't think it would cost that much to get him, and I agree. I don't think it does cost that much. You're talking Dom Smith, and again, maybe it is the Dom Smith Vassell package. I don't know. And I hate to just throw him in there into every trade, Vassell, because I actually do think he is interesting starter depth in the Mets farm system right now. But that's just a name that I think other teams would want. And It could be any prospect. We really don't know what each team values. But again, we're talking about for pitchers like this, being able to get a deal done without having to give up that top tier prospect that you want to hold on to. Another guy that I think fits that bill when it comes to left-handed relievers is Keegan Aiken of the Orioles, 27. Also 4 years of control, but a team that's going nowhere that would be willing to trade a reliever to get a piece that they can slot in and feel good about. You're looking at what he's done this year: 2.53 ERA, 0.82 WHIP. Lefties are hitting 111 against him, 127 on base, 148 slugging. They're doing nothing with him. It's not like he's a big strikeout guy, but he's very effective against left-handed batters. I think he really could replace, whether it's keeping Joel Rodriguez, but having Aiken be the primary loogie, or if it's getting rid of Rodriguez, or if it's getting rid of Shreve. I don't know exactly how they make that fit work, but I do think that Keegan Aiken would be another option. Now, he's not going to close games for you at the end. This would be kind of a move to make if you decided that you needed a left-handed reliever. And same thing kind of goes with Mantiply, where I don't think that necessarily solves all of your bullpen issues, but I do think that if you have faith in Trevor May and you have faith in Adam Ottavino, maybe that is enough. Maybe it's more faith in internal improvements with May coming back, with Holderman coming back, with what you're getting already out of Smith and Ottavino and Lugo, and knowing that you had the lock-in guy in Edwin Diaz. But that's really, I think, where the Mets are. I still think that the best route is some type of a trade package where you maybe give up on one of your guys that has been at this for a while, in Dom Smith or a JD Davis, as kind of a sweetener on top of a prospect that another team values, but doesn't really hurt your farm system that much. If you can get one impact arm that way, and you can kind of keep this nucleus of really good prospects together, I think that's the best move. I would be really happy if we get to the end of all of this at the deadline and, whether the Mets stay internal and they go Mark Vientos at DH or Francisco Alvarez. We've talked about those things a lot. If we can get to a point here where the Mets can win this division and hang on to Francisco Alvarez, Mark Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, and Brett Beatty, if they can keep those four guys together, as well as, of course, being able to hang on to the other guys you might like in the system, like Allen, or Ziegler, or also Alex Ramirez, then not only do you feel great about what this team could accomplish this year, but you look towards the future and you see more sustained success. And that's, I think, the balance the Mets have to strike. I get going all in. I get it. But I also think that you don't have to go all in if you have enough, where that one move is only going to adjust your chances to win. Let's just say right now, as presently constructed, the Mets have I don't know, 18% chance to win a World Series. That's just because there's a lot of teams that it's a gauntlet to make it through the playoffs, whatever. If adding David Bednar only, takes that up to 19.5, is it worth giving up 6 years of Mark Vientos? That's the balance that I think you got to play and you got to think about. It's a tough decision to make, and I don't really blame Billy out there, whichever direction he decides to go with it. But the Mets also have games to play starting today as you're listening to this on a Tuesday. So let's preview what lies ahead in this 2-game set against the Houston Astros. Can the Mets get some revenge? I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But betonline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, esports, boxing, MMA, golf, so many different things that BetOnline is there for. They're your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting and scores. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm not going to do a super in-depth preview of this series because we kind of just saw the first half of it play out last week. I talked about it where this was kind of a split 4-game set, 2 games in Houston, 2 games at Citi Field. And if the Mets were going to win the series in that sense, you would have had to have taken 1 in Houston and swept the 2 at home. They got swept in Houston. Now, onus on the Mets to try to get some payback and sweep them and their ballpark at Citi Field. You're going to see a rematch. Luis Garcia versus Carlos Carrasco. The Mets did not fare well when they played in Houston. They lost that game. Garcia is a pitcher that really has some good stuff and can absolutely carve the Mets up. But I also think he's a pitcher the Mets can fare well against. It's not like it's extreme velocity that they can't catch up to. It's not like they're going up against Sandy Alcantara, and the fact that they were able to beat him, that means you can beat anybody. So no reason to fear that one. It'll be good to see Carlos Carrasco back on the mound after getting pulled with that sore back against Houston last time. So we'll see how he fares. I think Trevor Williams will be available to back him up for some long relief if he's unable to go deep. They also have Adonis Medina that can fill that role as well. They don't necessarily need Trevor Williams for this turn, especially if they expect Max Scherzer back. Scherzer likely to have a rehab start somewhere in the New York area on Tuesday. I haven't seen yet as I'm recording this, whether that's in Syracuse or Binghamton, but expect him to take the ball in one of those spots, and that would leave him available to return on Sunday. You have for the Wednesday game, Framber Valdez, and I'd imagine Taijuan Walker pitches against him. Walker would be going on normal rest, so I think he'll get the nod, although they have not announced that just yet. Valdez is a really tough left-handed pitcher, really good ground ball guy. He's going to be hard to beat. So that's not a great matchup for the Mets as far as Valdez is concerned. I think Taijuan Walker is throwing the ball well. Pitching at home will be good for him. A little bit of a bigger ballpark to contain some of those guys like Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker and even Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman. So it'll be good to have that game take place at Citi Field. And I think the Mets, have a great chance against anybody right now. So there's no reason why they can't go out and win one of these two, if not both of these two games. And the way that will set up your pitching for the rest of the weekend, you got the Rangers next. Chris Bassett will be good to go on Friday. David Peterson would be good to go on Saturday. Then Sunday, you'd have Carlos Carrasco again. So even if you don't get Scherzer back, the Mets rotation is fine this week without Trevor Williams. If you do get Scherzer back, you go Scherzer on Sunday, and then you could kind of continue to fill your rotation. Carrasco would be ready at the beginning of the next week. You'd also have, of course, Taijuan Walker, Bassett, Peterson, and that would be the rotation, I think, probably leading into the break. It'd be Scherzer to Carrasco to Bassett to Peterson. Actually, Scherzer to Carrasco to Walker to Bassett to Peterson. That would be your five, and then hopefully DeGrom would join that group at some point in July as well. And that would just put you right on over the top. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.